Hi, everybody. It's Jeff from Ayelet Tours, and since 1986, we've been connecting people to Israel and the Jewish world. We are the official travel partners of Hadassah Missions to Israel. We run trips worldwide under the banner of the Traveling University, featuring outstanding scholars. We run trips for Jewish singles and Jewish adults under the banner of Best Day Adventures. Just had a group come back from Croatia. In fact, we've got groups all over the world right now. One in Morocco, one in Spain. I just got back from Cuba last week. So check it out. You can find all the upcoming trips, including trips with our speaker this evening, Dr. David Mendelsohn, who will be accompanying groups both to Greece and to India in 2025. So we're very much looking forward to that. And want to welcome all of you this evening for this, our first in a four-part series. We've decided to name Scholar-Palooza. It's like a festival, like Lollapalooza, only maybe fewer mosh pits, less sunscreen necessary, and everybody's a VIP. Everyone gets a VIP pass, front row tickets. So thank you for signing in and for joining us this evening. I'm very much looking forward to this evening's presentation. Before I do, just a couple of housekeeping things. Number one, this is a webinar, not a Zoom meeting, which means you can see us, we cannot see you. That means you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the program, but we do encourage you to participate. You can do that by posting any questions you may have for Dr. Mendelsohn in the Zoom Q&A function. Once we get through the formal presentation, we will go through those questions and answer as many of them as we possibly can. It is a recorded program, so if you miss anything, you just want to watch it over and over again, you can contact us and let us know, and we will get you the link so you can see that. Okay. There's a lot to cover. This evening's program, I should introduce first our speaker, Dr. David Mendelsohn. Here we go. His areas of expertise include Islamic studies, history, and culture of Arabs with Israeli citizenship, Bedouin law, and relationship between language and culture in Arabic and Hebrew. Dr. Mendelsohn also lectures on the history and relationship between Middle East countries and militant organizations. David holds advanced degrees in diverse fields, a PhD in classics, linguistics, an MA in archaeology, linguistics, and an honors BA in classical studies. As I mentioned before, he will be leading our trip to Greece next May and a trip to India in November. Information about both of those you can find on our website, ayelet.com. So, Dr. Mendelsohn, with no further ado for tonight's presentation on Greek mythology, history, and philosophy, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. And I look forward to sharing my excitement about this particular field of study. I especially have always found the Greeks fascinating in the sense of how they've invented so many concepts and ideas that we hold to be commonplace today. Arguably, they invented theater, the idea of history, the whole concept of history and historiography is the idea, of course, democracy. The list goes on, drama, the list goes on and on. And what I would like to do today is use a quick look at the Greek, I guess, culture, the Greek mindset in ancient Greece, and show how the impact of the meeting between the Jewish mindset and the Greek mindset, the powerful waves that engendered, and how it has left an inescapable mark on the Jews in particular, to the extent that things that we hold to be commonplace Jewishy things to do throughout the entire Jewish spectrum, be it Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, we've all have an indelible stamp of Hellenism on all of us. And it's come to us in three different ways. And we're going to look at those ways today. One of them, of course, is our interaction. Jews lived in Greece from antiquity for 2,000 years, since about 350 BCE. And of course, with Hellenism, with Alexander the Great pushing forward and his impact being felt, particularly in the land of Israel. So without further ado, I'm going to share my PowerPoint. And I would like to begin with the port of Athens, the Piraeus. I believe this is one of the reasons why Greece did become the powerhouse and leading cultural icon that it did. It had access through the sea, through this incredible port, to so many different ways of thinking. And via the conduit of economics and trade, they developed the alphabet with their trade with the Phoenicians. They learned the stories and mythologies of countless gods from the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians and the Minoans. And they started, and in turn, the Greeks questioning about everything, the gods, the system of order, politics, theater, poetry, you name it. The idea of creating a history of public art. This in turn, as you will see, impacted the rest of the world. And when you go to Athens, which many of us hopefully will be going together in May, you're going to notice that at the very top of Athens, there's a hill. And on top of the hill, you have these temples, the Parthenon, the Erechtheion, the treasury to the winged Nike. And this was the high place of the city, the Acropolis, where you built the temples, the places of worship. And one of the questions that I'm going to ask you to think about over and over again is, why does a holy place, a sacred place, why in so many cultures is it placed in the highest pinnacle? What is it about height? Is it the idea of getting closer to the gods? Is the idea of creating a sense of awe because of the incredible view? These are, and is the sense of awe and holiness and sacredness created by nature, or can it be also created from within? Jews, for instance, in many places like to pray in shtipalas, little tiny synagogues, and they perhaps arguably create the same sense of awe. Sacred spaces is going to be a big topic for us together today and also throughout our travels. This is what it looked like then, from the sacred, the Acropolis of Athens. You would climb to the top. You had festivals frequently throughout the year when everybody would come. As you see, they climb up the hill of Athens, make their way up the Propylaea, it's called, go through it, Propylaea, and worship at the Parthenon, worship at the Erechtheion, view the beautiful treasury of the winged Nike. And this was the place of holiness, the place where you felt closer to the gods. In contrast, we had the agora, the secular, down below. And down below you had things like the regular markets, the shooks, where you went to buy your vegetables and pottery and day-to-day needs. And you also had athletics going on everywhere. You had races, wrestling, boxing, things to stay in good shape. Remember the Greek concept of a healthy mind and a healthy body. This was the place where it happened for the body. And in turn, of course, you had also schools of thought that went on in the same area, in the agora. So you'd have teachers taking their pupils and walking basically around these buildings. One particular style of philosophy was called the peripatetics, because they wandered throughout, in and out of the pillars, discussing questions such as, why are we here? Are our senses actually real? What we see and feel is actually there? What is politics? Why is drama the way it is? What about the most recent war with Persia? All these things were discussed and taught. And you also had, of course, this famous painting of the great thinkers, and you have Plato and Aristotle having a discussion in the agora. And I wanted to stress that they show Plato as this kind of old man, respectable but aged. Plato, in fact, was not only a great philosopher, he was also a wrestler. So in other words, this idea of a healthy body was important. Actually, Plato actually won the Delphic Games. The Delphi Games are all healthy. And Plato, I believe, is his wrestling name. It means wide-shouldered. So the Greeks took this very seriously. And if I'm going to give you any gift today, all of you, I'm going to teach you how to look at Greek vases in a whole different way. I want you to dust off the idea of archaeology as something boring, or vases as just vases that you see in every museum. And I want you to realize that the Greeks realized that they had something special going. They knew they were unusual with their epic novels of the Iliad and the Odyssey, with their victory over the Persians and creating democracy. They knew that they were unique. There are Olympic Games that were held every 4 years in 776 BCE. And they were so proud of themselves that they depicted everything they did on their architecture, but particularly in their vases. And what I want to show you here in these two vases is explain to you and teach you how to date vases. Every once in a while, I'm going to pause at a picture. I'll explain it. I'm going to ask you to date it. So the one you see in the black with the two wrestlers, with one person holding the leg of the other one on the left side, this is called black figure vases. And you can tell black figure because it's always 500 BCE or earlier. And this was done because the black would be painted on, and the red was the actual color of the clay once it was fired and oxidized. Then after 500 BC, the potters figured out that it was, or the artists on the pottery figured out that it worked better if they left the red for the bodies, and they painted on the heads and the other bodies in the background. And it created a much more realistic, almost photographic look. And the Greeks painted all their vases with their scenes of history, with their mythology, with scenes from day-to-day life. Woman's life looked like from the beginning, from her youth all the way to her old age. We know what a soldier looked like going off to war. And they tell stories, and they're beautiful to look at. Here we have a Panathenaic amphora. Every 4 years, the winner of the Olympic Games would be given this amphora. As you can see, it's a black figure. If you would date it, you'd say it's older than 500 BCE. And if I asked you at a museum or I pointed a vase, you would have to say, I'd say, what date would you give this, guys? And you'd look at it and you say, David, that's more than 500. It's quite well done. So it's closer to 400, maybe 510, 520 BCE. And I'd say, you're right. And you're getting closer. You're getting good at dating vases. And so put that in your back pocket. Think about it. We're going to come back to it later. And midway between the Acropolis, the high point of the city of Athens, and the Agora, the low point, the city center where everything happened, you had two incredible, unique sites that we're going to visit together. One is called the Areopagus, and the other one is called the Pnyx. The Areopagus today looks like this. I wrote assuming responsibility because the Areopagus is where the court cases were tried by jury in ancient Athens. You had a jury of Athenians that would try particularly vexing cases. So what's amazing about this is on high you have the gods, on low you have the mortals carrying out their day-to-day stuff. In the middle, you have a system that essentially used to belong to the gods. The gods decided who was morally good and who was morally bad and what the punishment should be. But at some point, the mortals realized, the humans said, the Greeks, we have to try our cases by ourselves. We can't just have the gods say an eye for an eye, and if somebody kills someone, we should kill them in turn, or if there's a troubling case, the gods will take care of it. This doesn't work in society. We're going to assume responsibility ourselves and take over these court cases. And in fact, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Some of you might know it, anybody who's studied anything classical in high school or university. The story of the Oresteia is set in the end on the Areopagus. It's a play written by Aeschylus, one of the earliest Greek playwrights, who also fought in the Battle of Marathon. It was against the Persians. So everything interconnects in these stories, by the way. If you fought in the Battle of Marathon against the Persians, it meant that you were responsible for the victory of democracy over a despotic, that's how they saw it, monarchy. So this playwright, Aeschylus, wrote of the story of Orestes. Orestes was the son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. Agamemnon had been gone to Troy for 10 years. And when he came back with a princess of Troy, Cassandra. but minus a daughter. His daughter Iphigenia, he sacrificed to the gods so that his ships, which had been stranded at sea, could continue sailing. So he returns home, and his wife Clytemnestra, who has been tending the house, is obviously quite upset about the death of her daughter. And she's assumed control of the kingdom while her husband was gone with her lover, Aegisthus. And she tricks Agamemnon into taking a bath, and she slays him. She kills him in the bath out of revenge. And now Orestes, the son, is put into a dilemma, placed in a dilemma. According to the gods, according to the code of conduct, if anybody kills a parent, your father, you must avenge that person by killing them in turn. And Athena, the goddess, goes to Orestes and says, you have to kill the killer. And Orestes says, but that's my mother. And if I kill her, I've committed matricide, which is also a sin against the gods. And I'll be followed by these furies, these horrible demons that will plague me and torture me. And Athena says, I'm sorry, but that's your responsibility. And Orestes thinks about it, and he figures he has to do it, and he kills his mother, and the Furies follow him. So here we have this particularly crazy case where there was no way out for poor Orestes. So they have at the end of the play, they have a trial that's held on the Areopagus, and it's a hung jury, half fined for Orestes to be acquitted, the other fined for Orestes to be convicted. And Athena casts the deciding vote in his favor, acquitting him. And in this case, you also get the idea of someone having an acquitting, the final vote, deciding yes or no. So basically, the Areopagus, that's their mythology, but it's also the idea of this is how humans can take responsibility for themselves. And when you compare it to other societies in which only the king or a dictator or a ruler decides the fates, again, you have a democracy deciding a set-up jury for every particular court case, which is remarkable. Again, think about it. And the other place you had was the Pnyx. I wrote here, idiots at the Pnyx. Can I move this over? I don't know if this is blocking you. And the reason I wrote idiots at the Pnyx, well, I'll explain it to you. In a democracy of Athens, every citizen, male, of course, it was a patriarchy, and slaves couldn't vote, but everybody had a vote. And if you chose not to exercise your vote, they said you're not in politics. You're not taking part. You're not using your civic right and duty to take part in the affairs of the city. Politics is the affairs of the city, polis. And a person in Greek who is private is called an idiot, idiotos. So the word for an idiot and a private person who doesn't look after his city and take part in politics became the same thing. That's why we have the word idiot until today. And another fun aside that I wanted to tell you, remember I talked about the Greeks' love of pottery and telling their stories, and they're explaining their particular unique way of life. This also happened under pottery. When the pots broke up in smaller pieces, these shards called ostraca, they'd bring these shards to the meetings on the Pnyx, the democratic meetings where you decide on events that affected everybody. And every once in a while, every once a year, they'd have a meeting to decide who should be exiled. If there was a figure that was too charismatic, too populist, that was in danger of getting rid of democracy and assuming too much power for himself, they would actually, all the Athenians would write in the meeting, would write on this piece of pottery the person's name. And when they're all gathered, if there was a majority vote, this political character who was rising in power had to go to exile for 10 years, a comfortable exile somewhere else, but they removed them from the place where they felt they had too much influence. These things happened on the Pnyx, where we are going to be together. I just wanted to show you another red figure vase of just two people playing a game, actually Achilles and Ajax playing a kind of a board game during the war of against Troy. That's shown in the Iliad, the epic work, the Iliad by Homer. And just again, you want to give me a date? It's black figure. As you see the red bat. When it says black figure, it means the figures are black. So you'd have to automatically say 500. Do you think it's very well done or not so well done? Is it a bit crude? That's when you date. And I would say it's about 530 BCE. And we're going to keep going like this every once in a while. And here you have a better red figure. in a calyx. The Greeks drank their wine out of a cup called a calyx. So imagine this beautiful, they love their wine with everything. Imagine you had this cup of beautiful black pottery and it was filled with wine, like dark red wine, and you're drinking it and you don't know what image you're going to get until you finish. And when you finish, you'd show your friends, look what I got. You were all sitting together at a symposium with your friends, having a great party, a discussion about life, enjoying yourselves. And in this case, it was Patroclus Achilles bandaging his best friend, Patroclus, who'd been wounded in a recent skirmish. First of all, it's beautiful. You can see its red figure, right? If you look on top here, can you see they wrote the name? Achilleus, Achilles, and Patroclus here. So they even wrote the names. Isn't that remarkable? In every aspect, they're representing themselves. They're great epic novels, a scene of love and pathos, a person taking care of their best friend. And because it's such fine detail, you can say, okay, this is red figure. It's going to be in the 400s. David, I'm going to guess 480. And I'd say, wow, good job. That's exactly what it is. Well done. And here's another red figure vase that shows the day-to-day life of the woman. So you can see she's practicing her instrument. She's playing the lyre. You can see one on top. The one behind her is holding the woman's her treasury box filled with her cosmetics, her oils, her unguents, and such things. And it's just lovely. The scenes you can see if you start looking for them. And then, of course, you have the famous funerary oration by Pericles in the Agora. Behind him, you can see the beautiful Acropolis. And you have Pericles giving his funeral oration for the war dead. He's basically saying, look what we've done as a society. The Persians threatened us and we won, but we have to mourn our dead, but we have to recognize what they gave up their lives for this incredible concept that only we have, this idea of democracy, that all people are equal. And it's a very famous funeral oration. I recommend that you read it, you look it up later, and we will discuss it at greater length when we are together in Athens. I just want to show you this. Please be aware, if you weren't, that this concept of this pristine white marble of ancient Greece did not really exist, in fact. They were garishly colored, almost gaudy to our taste today. And you had, so and they would repaint them all the time. They were adorned with jewelry. And so these images were never white. They were meant to be colored. They were meant to catch your eye. They were meant to, whether you were literate or not, you knew these stories and what they meant. And here's a Scythian archer. This is what they actually look like. We know this for a fact. It's not a theory because infrared light has actually revealed the paintings in their full, they're much closer to their original. And of course, we've uncovered digs and excavations that because they've been preserved for thousands of years underground, they are dug up with their colors as well. When you look in museums, start looking for the colors as well. You'll see them. Again, I want to throw this in here. This is Meteora. This is a monastery in Meteora. And again, I wanted you to think about where do we put our sacred places? So obviously, in this case, it started off with ascetics, wanting to be alone monks, and then gradually creating a community of monks, secluded, but in a place of awe-inspiring beauty. And this for them was a sacred space. That when you're alone in nature, when you're hiking and you're overcome by awe of the beauty of it all, is that feeling something religious? Or is it just you're overcome by beauty? Are the two related? Is it related to the feeling of when you pray alone with great devoutness, with a sense of spirituality and love for something greater than you are? Are they related or not? And it's something the Greeks played with, and it's something I would like to play with you as well as we travel. So here, I just deliberately put 3 slides. One was on the pediment of the Parthenon, which shows the birth of Athena. Athena was born out of the head of Zeus. He had a horrible headache, and Hephaestus helped out by basically hammering Zeus's head open. So Athena came out in her full glory, the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of warfare, the goddess of strategy, and she jumped up the startled gods around them, and the goddess of victory, who is Athena's patron, right next to her with the wings next to her. That's one. Next to it, and this is arguably one of the greatest gifts of the Greeks for all of us, we have Herodotus holding a scroll with his histories. Herodotus was known as the first historian, the first person who actually said, "Why are we here?" And he said, I can give you the popular version, and I can also give you the version of what I really think happened, and also the versions of what other people say. It's not pure history, it's not pure historiography, but he's the historiography, but he's the first to actually really make a stab at it. And we have a lot of information. He traveled to Egypt. He records their customs and habits, which today we can compare with the customs and habits of the Jewish people. And there's incredible correlations from what he said to what we've actually been able to prove in modern times through archaeology. And of course, on the very bottom, we have the famous scene of Socrates drinking the hemlock. Socrates was accused of doubting the gods and corrupting the youth, and he was sentenced in a democratic case on the Areopagus to death. And he could have escaped. He had many friends, and even among the government, they were willing to smuggle him out, but he chose to die for democracy. And it's something we're going to discuss as we visit the prison of Socrates, where he was held. It's incredible. It gives you you get a sense of the dangers of democracy, the importance of upholding its laws, whether or not you agree or disagree. And there's some incredible discussions to come. And again, remember, keep in mind that as I'm lecturing to you or discussing with you about the Greeks and their world, the main idea is that the Jewish people were witness to this. As I said, Jews had lived in Greece since 350 BCE, and the rise of Hellenism impacted everybody, especially the Jewish people. So keep in mind that this is also us. We incorporated it, we swallowed it. It came to us in many directions, in many ways, and I believe that in many ways we are the most Hellenized people today as a result of this interaction and the way we absorbed the lessons. Again, I chose a black figure vase. You want to date it for me quickly? It's a bit crude. It's black figure, maybe 550. That sounds like a good guess. I chose this vase because it's Odysseus being strapped to a ship as they're passing the sirens in the sea. The story goes, as Odysseus, it took Odysseus over 10 years to return after the fall of Troy back to his homeland of Ithaca. And there's a certain area that he was going to pass where these sirens sang so beautifully that it was impossible to resist their allure, and sailors would jump off their ship to be killed by the sirens. Odysseus really wanted to hear the song of the sirens, so he had his men cover their ears with wax, and he had them tie him to the mast of the ship. And he said, no matter what I do, don't release me. No matter how much I beg you or gesture to you, leave me alone. Just keep sailing until rowing till we get through it all. I want to hear this for myself. And it's a famous story of how their beautiful songs enticed him. He was weeping. He was begging his men to let him go. And of course they didn't. And he sails through and he's experienced what no other mortal has ever gotten to experience before. The forbidden in many ways. And the seduction of the unknown. Here's another scene, a red figure this time. So you're going to guess the date for me. If you said around 490, yeah, you'd be right. But here you have Odysseus strapped to the mast, like his wrists are tied. You have the sailors rowing, refusing to listen to him, and the harpies are trying to lure him into jumping into the water. The reason I want to bring this up now, this particular story, is because for the Jews, the Jewish people, they used to depict this scene in synagogues in ancient Israel. Why? I believe it became a symbol for the lure of the outside world for Jewish people. The siren song, how beautiful it can be. But if you take that leap to follow it, you're going to die. It'll be danger. You won't be able to survive it. In one way or another, you will be lost. And the idea of tying yourself to the ship is being exposed to the danger and to the allure. How can you resist it enough to understand the seductive beauty of it all, and yet still stay true to who you are? So all of these myths that I'm showing you, the stories of Odysseus, the stories of the Iliad, these were all sung by the Greeks during sacred festivals. Remember, these myths that we love to hear, that we love to read, that we enjoy, we even tell our children of course, the condensed version, but kids love Bullfinch's mythology, or there's several Percy Jackson stories. Remember, these stories for the Greeks it was their Torah. It was their Bible. It was their holy script. And they sang them as hymns. They all had rhyme and rhythm and meter. And if you have somebody who knows how to read the Greek epics to you with the meter, you'll get a sense of the beauty of how intoxicating it was. And here's a bard, a rhapsode, who wanders and sings the songs from island to island, place to place. They were revered, and these stories were known by everybody. Alexander the Great slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow. The word tragedy itself comes from the ancient Greek tragodia, which means the word tragos, goat, and adeon, or ode, for song. So you have a goat song, and here's a depiction of Dionysus. And what they meant is basically that it was sung every year at a theater. Here's the theater of Dionysus that we're going to see in Athens, right by the Acropolis, right below, and towards the Agora. But it was in the holy area, still, don't forget, so it's still higher up. And these songs would be sung. A goat would be sacrificed at the end, and it was a holy festival. As you saw, the pilgrimage of the people coming to the Acropolis to watch these plays, you had one person who would sit at the bottom and sing it. The singer, the one singer, this chazan, let's call him, was so famous, his name was Thespis. And he decided, imagine someone does this with a story from the Bible, he decided that he was going to sing his main part, but he was going to have somebody else respond to him. So he hired somebody, let's say he was doing the scene for Adam and Eve. He says, I'm going to have somebody play Eve. And he created the first known play. That's why Thespian is known as an actor until today. And these songs, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the epic cycle, the epic poems, the Homeric hymns, the Greek myths, these were all religious stories. As you can see, the vases tell them over and over again. Here you have the goat, and here you have the festival was done. The word synagogue is a gathering. It's a Greek word meaning a gathering place. This was your original synagogue. And I showed you the Torah reading, just make you understand that when we're reading the Torah, the Bible, on Shabbat, we're basically doing the same thing. We have a singer singing the stories that are our stories and that we hold to be dear to us. And if you think about it, the whole pageantry of a theater, we reenact in the synagogue. You have the Torah scroll dressed with a crown. You take it out. You march around it in ceremony. The clothing gets removed, gets opened for the beautiful knowledge within, and it gets sung and celebrated. And it takes place in a place that's known as a synagogue, a Greek word meaning the gathering place. It's not a coincidence. I want to stress that. Here we have Dionysus again in the kylix. Remember the drinking bowl? Some of the kylixes can be very racy, by the way. If you had a party with people who were politically correct, you would have also extremely pornographic imagery as well. So you didn't know what you were going to get until you drank your wine. And of course, you were drunk a bit, you were inebriated slightly, and it made you even happier and more. I guess the reaction was even more excited. Here we have Odysseus again. Look at him on his boat, and this is a shul, a synagogue in Bet Shean. Here's another imagery again. The Minotaur being slain by Theseus, and just so again. The question I have for you here, and I wrote it out just so we can go over them one by one. Why the Greeks? What was going on over there? Was it a crazy combination of historical circumstances, DNA, was their religion, their society? Because they gave rise to democracy, the court of law, a writing alphabet system that everyone could learn very quickly. The sciences, they gave us philosophy, physics, biology, botany, I'm not joking, chemistry, theater, a new way of seeing history, and the spin on art and architecture. Why is that different? Their statues no longer just celebrated monarchs or kings or pharaohs as they did in Egypt and Mesopotamia. They celebrated the regular person, the regular common male or female were celebrated for just being who they were. And the Greeks asked themselves this question as well. Why are we different? They really wanted to know. And I wanted to use this quick chance, I'm watching my time carefully here, to show you a quote by Hippocrates. If you know who Hippocrates was, Hippocrates is known as the first physician. We have the Hippocratic Oath, which doctors take before they embark on their world of medicine. If you're Jewish and object to using the word the gods, you can also do the Maimonidean oath based on Rambam, Maimonides. But what Hippocrates observes, by the way, he's saying, why are we different? he has a statement. He says, you will find, as a general rule, that the constitutions and the habits of a people follow the nature of the land where they live. Where the soil is rich, soft, and well-watered, and where the seasons are favorable, you will find people fleshy and they have watery constitutions. Such people are incapable of great effort. In addition, such a people are for the most part cowards. They are easygoing and sleepy, clumsy craftsmen, and never clean or delicate. But if a land is bare, waterless, and rough, swept by the winter gales and burnt by the summer sun, you will find there are people hardy and sinewy. They are by nature keen and fond of work. They are wakeful, headstrong, and self-willed, and inclined to fierceness rather than tame. They are keener at their crafts, more intelligent, and better warriors. First of all, this is not the most politically correct of statements, and there's much in here that would be objectionable by today's standards and tastes and climate. And that's not why I read it to you. I mean, I like the fact that the Greeks, once again, are trying to explain something. They're saying, he's basically saying that we build in marble because we can't build in wood. And if you're going to build in marble, you have to devise a system of mathematics that allows you to build with such heavy material, how to carve it, how to cut it. The challenges we have of not having the greatest of climates has forced us to be inventive. So it's a theory, but he was trying to ask a question. I wanted to show you a place where you would see this. This is actually Delphi. So again, you don't see many trees, you see a rocky terrain. This is actually the temple of Apollo. And I'm going to use this chance to tell you another story. If you look far off in the distance of the mountains, they would all come from all over the world, not just in Greece. They came from Mesopotamia, they came from Turkey, they came from Israel. They came everywhere. And they came in all in droves and climbed this mountain up into Delphi. They came to the temple of Apollo. Why? To consult with the Oracle of Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi was so famous in antiquity that it was considered to be an infallible prophetic source to reveal the truth and predictions of the future. And as a result of its popularity and reliability, Delphi became an incredible community, a very rich community. As I told you, Plato wanted the Pythian Games here in Delphi that was held every 4 years. It was a very rich and affluent society, all because of this oracle of the Oracle of Delphi. But when the pilgrim would come all the way to the top of the mountain and get ready to consult with the oracle, they had to wait. They had to purify themselves in a pool at the bottom. When the time came, they came to the temple of Apollo, and in front of the temple door was a sign in Greek that said, Gnothi seauton, know yourself, or the way they like to say it, know thyself. And what it means is, be careful of what you're asking and what you're expecting to hear. Know yourself, know who you are. And they always tell a story that there was a king Croesus in what's modern Turkey today, who was the richest king in the world. And his only competition were the Persians. So he sent an ambassador to ask the oracle about fighting the Persians. So when they petition the question, they say, what will happen if we fight Persians? They receive the answer from the oracle. If you fight the Persians, the great empire will fall. And so King Croesus is very happy. He organizes men. He rushes to war. He fights and he loses horribly. And he gets taken in prison to the king of the Persians. And what's the lesson here? What did he forget to ask in his question? He didn't say. He just asked what will happen. And the answer was the great kingdom will fall. He didn't say which kingdom. Skip ahead another 100 years. And you have the Persians attacking the Athenians and devastating them, outnumbering them militarily in the water, on the land. And the envoys from Athens, the citizens send a messenger to ask the oracle what they should do. And the oracle's answer is, you might as well build a wooden wall as have any chance of defeating the Persians. And he brings this answer back, and the Athenians are devastated. They're weeping. They think that means they've lost. And Themistocles, the general, says, no, a wooden wall means we should build ships, and his 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 version was accepted, and they built a navy. And of course, the famous Battle of Salamis is how the Greeks, the Athenians, eventually ended up defeating the Persians. So know thyself, the sign over the oracle, is a warning for humans. When you're going to ask a question, know why you're asking it and what you expect, and ask yourself why you're expecting to receive a certain answer. So it's a beautiful little story, and it's true, which is also helpful. So we're going to look now fast at the pre-Socratic philosophers, because again, this all comes into huge bearing in terms of our own history as and our way of thinking today as Jewish people. So the pre-Socratic philosophers weren't just contained to Athens. They started in Athens, and they started setting up place in what's today Turkey, in Italy, in the islands, and they asked many questions that were remarkable. This guy Anaximander was the first to draw a map of the Earth, not the first, but very accurately to within, I think, 100 miles. He suggested that mankind was derived from aquatic matter. He discussed evolution. I love this one. In the 5th century, Xenophanes looked at fossil fish on the and shells on the rocks in Sicily and said, this land must have been underwater once. And he said, that means if we were underwater once, we may be again. And he described reality as a wheel. And he's the first person that used fossils as evidence for a theory of the history of the Earth. And I love this quote of his. Everyone, please listen to this carefully. Xenophanes says, the Ethiopians say their gods are black with flat noses. The Thracians say their gods have blue eyes and red hair. But if oxes or horses or lions had hands and could draw, horses would make their gods like horses, oxen like oxen, and they would draw their forms and mold their bodies just like the bodies they have themselves. In other words, he says that religion is basically something we create in the image of ourselves. And Xenophanes attacked Homer and another famous writer of the gods in mythology, Hesiod, for their belief in many gods. He said God is one, eternal, and causes things to happen by his mind alone. Again, remember, we're dealing with, in the 500s, with ways of thinking that for us sound surprisingly modern. What about the Jewish presence in Greece? Here we have a very early menorah with a lulav next to it. From the island of Greece, I believe from around the 1st century BCE. And Jews have been present in Greece for 2,000 years. And the oldest ones, who are still there today, by the way, and we're going to meet them, are the Romaniots, the Greek Jews. Greek Jew is usually used for any person of Jewish descent or faith that lives or originates from Greece. And we have Jewish people living in Greece and exposed to this way of thinking of this evolution from a very early time. I just wanted you to understand that we already are exposed as Jews in Greece itself. That's one medium. There is, again, the same place I showed you before in Delphi, there's a manumission wall. And on the manumission wall, we have reference to 3 Jewish female slaves that were freed. How were you freed in Delphi? What they did is, you could never really free a slave, but what they would do is they'd sell the slave, they would give the slave to the god Apollo. And once the slave is given to Apollo, Apollo can claim the slave whenever they want. And of course, it's presumed that Apollo never claimed them, so essentially they were freed. So this manumission, and on this wall were 3 female Jewish slaves who were referred to as being freed. I want to include this red figure vase in a kalik, in a drinking cup. This is actually the oracle. As you can see, she's holding a bowl. She's peering inside as she's divining the future for the person who's making the request. And across is a priest who would sometimes, she spoke often in tongues, like in gibberish, and there'd be a priest who would decipher the words. So he's standing next to her, listening, deciphering basically what she's saying. She's sitting on a tripod. And this is a recreation of what Delphi would have looked like based on the archaeological evidence. And I wanted to discuss also the 2 types of Jews in Greece, the Sephardim and the Romaniot. So we're going to be meeting both communities in May. And Romaniot were truly Hellenized Jews. They spoke Greek, and they absorbed many of the attributes, customs, traditions, and the languages. And one small example of a Romaniot Jew today During Hanukkah time, we all sing the song Maoz Tzur, the Rock of Ages song. And there's a line in the song that says, Hayavanim nikbetzu elai. The Greeks ganged up on us. In Greece, the Jews don't say that. They say the Syrians ganged up on us because, in fact, Antiochus wasn't Greek. He was coming from Syria. So again, just understand that this is already the same story as ours, but with a much deeper grasp of history and a deeper sensitivity to their own role within this story. I wanted to show you this picture really quickly, and it's a quick quiz for all of you. In this picture, we have the chief rabbi of Greece, and we have the Archbishop of Greece, and a regular Christian guy. So which one is the rabbi, and which one is the priest, and which one is the regular Christian guy? So whenever I ask this question, many people point to this guy. They assume this is the rabbi. And in fact, Rabbi Gabi Negrin, who I hope you will meet, he is the chief rabbi of Greece, and this is the Archbishop of Greece. And look at the uniform of the Greek rabbi. This is a regular rabbinical costume, and the Greeks and Christians in Greece will recognize it as such. Just to make you understand how long they've been in the society and how much of a part of it they truly are. And they're fully, he's an Orthodox Jew. So it's just to gain a sense. The Greeks themselves did show some awareness of the Jewish people. Josephus Flavius quotes meeting a Jew from Kole, Syria, modern Lebanon. And Aristotle and Josephus, who's Jewish, basically, you know his story. He's the one who tells us about Masada and the Jewish histories from his own perspective. So he's quoting Aristotle. I suspect this is not necessarily true, but he has Aristotle saying, I met a Jew from Lebanon. These Jews are derived from the Indian philosophers and were called Kalani. This Jewish person not only spoke Greek, but had the soul of a Greek. During my stay in Asia, he visited the same places I did, conversed with me and other scholars to test our learning. But as one who has been intimate with cultivated persons, it was rather he who imparted to us something of his own. In other words, we learned from him. Again, a remarkable story to be taken with a grain of salt, but still, we can definitely say the Jewish people had a sense of themselves even then. It's Josephus's perspective of how Aristotle would have understood a Jew. The Romaniot themselves, they say, we came to Greece because there was a ship going to Rome with Jewish slaves. A storm blew the boat off course, and it was wrecked in Ioannina. The survivors stayed in Ioannina and settled there. We're going to go to Ioannina together. The Romaniots had their own language. This was a great surprise for me, by the way. If you notice, Jeff talked about my background in the classics. So I've spent many years studying ancient Greek, and I also was raised with a very strong background in Jewish studies. So my Old Testament Hebrew, my Torah Hebrew, Talmudic Hebrew is pretty strong. So when they have a language that's written in Hebrew of ancient Greek, and that's their spoken language. It's about 90% ancient Greek, 10% Hebrew. And I was able to read this language for the first time, and I'd never been exposed to it before. And it was an amazing experience. It's called Yevani, and it looks like this. And this is the synagogue. No. I love the synagogue, and I can't wait to show it to you. As you can see, it has many Greek elements. The more we explore, the more you're going to be picking up on these elements for yourselves. And of course, we can't have a discussion on Greece without discussing Alexander the Great. And he himself was taught by Aristotle. And here I want to take a brief moment to make us understand and think about the fact the Greeks were not interested in sharing their knowledge with others. They held their Olympic Games, but nobody else could come except for the Greeks. It took the Macedonians. Alexander the Great was a Macedonian. His father, Philip II, was Macedonian king. The Macedonians were not accepted by the Greeks, even though they spoke Greek and they considered themselves Greek, because they had many habits that the Greeks looked down upon. They didn't like the other Greeks, mainly mainland Greeks. They looked down on them, the island Greeks as well, the Spartan Greeks, the Athenians, and they even would discuss that they should even be allowed to fight in the games. So Philip II said, "Oh yeah, is that how you feel? I'm gonna use my wealth. I'm gonna hire the greatest Greek of you all, the one you acknowledge to be your master thinker, Aristotle." And he becomes the tutor of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great continues this chip on his shoulder about being Greek, not being properly Greek or enough Greek, and he exports what it means to be Greek to the entire world. So in other words, sometimes I used to think of the Macedonians almost as the Jews of Greece, you know, part of the society and yet kind of not part of it, and become so successful a member of the society and attempt to prove themselves. So Alexander the Great, as I said, he slept with copies of the Iliad under his pillow. He exported all this thought, this Socratic knowledge, Plato, everything we're speaking about, the idea of democracy, greater, even though it was he was a despot, he was a conqueror, he still brought this idea of the concept of these things to everybody. And when the Greeks met the Jews, especially in Israel, this contact created an explosion. And here's Alexander the Great doing his conquering. These are the scrolls, what they look like in those days, how your books of the Iliad and the Odyssey would have resembled. And along with the conquering and expanding, he spread he caused the spread of Hellenism and its influence, which of course included the alphabet. So everyone became literate. They were able to read and I won't get into this because I'm running out of time and I want to leave time for questions. But I want to say this new way of spreading philosophy, culture, politics, and gossip, how did it play out? You had things called symposiums. Of course, you've heard the term before, but essentially what it was you had every well-to-do household would have parties in which the men primarily would lie on couches, have musicians come around and play, and they would discuss sometimes important matters of the city. They would have musicians come. They had educated women called the Tyrai, who also were versed in politics, discuss politics. They had dancers, conversation, and this became the symbol of a true free person. And it was followed at the end by a ceremony, by a Greek ceremony. Why am I telling you this? Because when we Jews do our Laila Seder, our Seder, we are basically copying a symposium. Even the way we lie down on our couches to drink our wine to our left, it basically is an imitation of what the Jews do of what the Greeks did as freemen. So I wanted you and the Afikomen is a Greek word, which is actually the festival that ends any important occasion. So there's the resemblances and the connections go on and on. I don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted you to keep these in mind. And in 323, BJH for me is just before Jewish hippie, BCE. Alexander, 32 years old, dies of a mysterious illness. According to Diodorus, Alexander's companion said, "Who's going to replace you?" He said, "Toi krastioi, to the one who's strongest will become the new one." And given our own proximity to Hanukkah and the current turbulence of my home here in Israel, actually at the moment I'm in Berlin, but I live in Israel, Alexander's final words reverberate powerfully. So I want to thank you at this point, and I'll stop and I will take some questions. I hope there are some.
All right. There we go. Starting video. We finished the slideshow. Dr. Mendelsohn, thank you so much for that illuminating walk through Greek history from a Jewish perspective. There's a tremendous amount to cover, and I already see questions coming in. A reminder to everybody, if you would like to participate, you can post your questions in the Q&A. I should have said it at the beginning. You mentioned you're in Germany right now, so the internet connection every once in a while it was not the best. So our apologies to if it was a little difficult with the sound. But yes, for the vast majority of it, we're able to follow along. It worked out. I was grateful that the internet held all the way from over there. And anybody who can do a little math knows that you were kind enough to stay up until the middle of the night to give us this presentation. So I'm thankful for that as well. So before we share in question and answer, I just want to share my screen for a moment and remind people that, as you mentioned, you will be leading a group to Greece this coming May. There is an early bird discount going on right now through the rest of the month. So if you're interested in exploring Greece from a Jewish perspective, Dr. Mendelsohn will be leading this group next May. It should be a fascinating journey. Highly encourage people to check that out. If you would like to go even further further somewhere, you can accompany Dr. Mendelsohn to India in November. That's coming up in November. That's not even on our website yet. It will be very, very shortly. The direct link to find out information for the trip is at the top of my screen right there. Of course, you can always email us and we will get you that information as well. So you can find information about both of those trips and so much more on our website, ayelet.com. Okay, that was your commercial break there. We'll go to questions. We've got a couple that have come in here. One from Peg Elephant, who would like to know a little bit about current events. She writes, question, in light of current events, how are Jews in Greece faring today?
Well, first of all, it's a wonderful question to ask the Greeks themselves, when Greek Jews themselves, when you go to Greece. They generally have not experienced the same level of anti-Semitism, the kind of these extreme, if you're referring to the pro-Palestinian marches, and it's not quite to that degree in Greece. The Greek Jews are a minority, so they're not quite as prevalent. But the Greek Jews themselves are very patriotic. They're very proud to be Greek, and to the extent that many Greek Jews lost their lives during the Holocaust. Many in Thessaloniki, which I didn't speak about, and I would love to have gotten to. 90% of the Jews were massacred, and with all of that, the Jews who returned and their children still love being Greek, and they will never refer to the fellow Greeks as having been complicit in the Holocaust. They call those ones the collaborators. They have a special term for it. So in other words, and yet there are thriving. I mean, there's not very many. There's about 1,000 in Thessaloniki. I think in 2,000 Jews in Athens. But there are Jewish schools. There's mikvahs. There's congregations, and you're gonna experience the lifestyle when you're there. You'll get to ask them those questions yourselves. The chief rabbi of Greece himself, Rabbi Gabi Negrin, whose picture I showed to you, is a dear friend, and I'm hoping he will meet. In fact, I'm certain he will meet you. And he's a very proud Greek, very passionate about his Greekness, and he's also a very proud Jew, and loves his connection to Israel. And he speaks quite eloquently on this topic. What Hebrew words can be found in the Greek language? So many, I don't even know where to go on. But the name Doron, the Jewish name, just means Greek for gift. That's all it means. In the Talmud, I believe 5% of the Talmud, the words are Greek. There's just, as I said, the afikomen itself, but is a Greek word. But it goes on, the list goes on. You can just Google it, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of words available. What else do I see? Is there any questions? I missed. Someone else asked about a book. I recommend Aphrodite and the Rabbis by Burton Vizovsky. It's an incredible read, and this really gets in the topic that I'm fascinated by. The Jewish-Greek connection, and how many things we do that we think are Jewish are actually Greek in nature. I typed it in the answer. If you look it up, you'll see.
Perfect. So a couple other questions for you, Dr. Mendelsohn. First and foremost, I know you spoke about those Jewish slaves that were being freed earlier in the presentation. Generally, were Jews considered to be second-class citizens? Did they have equal rights? Where did the line kind of get drawn in ancient Greece?
First of all, they were mostly, the Jews who lived in Greece were typically, like most Jews, they were merchants. And they set up basically connections where they would sell. So they were in their own world. I'm sure they were looked down on just like any outsider is. But as the years and decades and centuries went by, they became Greek. I don't believe they were. If you're a polytheist, you're not looked down on. You're treated like anybody else. And it's only when monotheism steps in that you get this hatred and this bullying of other peoples to the degree that we see it today. What I didn't speak about enough was the fact that in the 1400s, of course, the Sephardim came on, this new wave of Jews. And as a result of the expulsion from Spain. So they arrived and they set up a community in Thessaloniki that became so powerful that, and with their own yeshivas, Jewish schools, that the Karo, the writer of the Shulchan Aruch, came from there. Some of the greatest Shabtai Tzvi also came from there. A lot of the great Jewish thinkers that we hold dear, most of their influence came via Saloniki. Ben Gurion visited Thessaloniki, and he called it the Jerusalem of the Balkans. He was so blown away by the presence of Jews who controlled the city. I think it was something like 80% of the population of Thessaloniki was Jewish. They controlled the port to the degree that during the expulsion from Spain, they closed the port to the Spaniards in protest. So just to realize that the Jews have a very strong and long and valued presence in Greece. This changed, by the way, when the Ottomans took over. The Ottomans left them more or less to themselves, as they always did. But when the Greeks gained their independence, the Jews had initially sided with the Ottomans. So this also caused problems. Again, this is to be discussed. It's a whole other lecture into itself. But I want you to have that in your pocket as well.
I know you mentioned the Jews of Thessaloniki and the port there. My understanding is that there's a connection between them and the establishment of the port in Tel Aviv. Are you familiar with that?
Haifa, yes, absolutely.
Oh, in Haifa.
Yeah, they were hired because of their knowledge of ports, of building remember, these were regular Jews with regular, like, that had we're used to Jews kind of being in the position of lawyers or doctors or the higher positions. Thessaloniki had them all. And the port builders were the port builders, and they knew how to design a port and how to run it well. And they hired them for the newly founded state of Israel to help them develop what a real port should be and how it should look for both, I think, Jaffa and Tel Aviv and Haifa, especially, I believe. Yeah, absolutely.
Seems to have worked out. Yeah. So we've got a very nice thank you from Rosa Borg, who says Toda Rabah. She's also in Europe. She's in Malta. And says it was an excellent presentation, and the sound was fine, so that was good.
Great.
Maybe it might be the over the ocean.
Chabad, yes, Chabad does have a presence in Greece. I don't want to go over time, but this is actually very important. Chabad has a presence in Athens and in Thessaloniki, and they are as like everywhere else, they provide a home and a place to touch base, to have a Shabbat. But there is friction. Imagine the Romaniat Jews have been there since, I said, 300 BC. The chief rabbi is a Romaniat Jew. And Chabad will come in and decide what is, and basically say, this is their version of what it means to be Jewish. This is what it really means to be kosher. And I hear complaints from Romaniat Jews who are religious. They say, we were religious Jews when their grandfathers were selling shmatas in a shtetl in Europe. Like, who are they to come and tell us? So Chabad is there. And they're also, and I hear this in other places, by the way, too, in Azerbaijan, in India. Chabad has a strong presence, and they fight with the local religious Jews. It's friction, not fighting, but it's something. It's a tension that we should be aware of and discuss. It's fascinating, and it's possible to do it delicately and politely, but it's very important to delve into.
Dr. Mendelsohn, we've reached I guess the middle of the hour, but the top of the hour. I just want to say thank you to you on behalf of everybody here. I hope those that might be interested in joining you in Greece will not resist that siren call, and they will choose to do so. And for everybody that is taking part in this 4-part program, just a reminder that we will be together next week. Same time, same place, same link. Next week will be Professor Stephen Burke talking about Europe in crisis, Putin, Poland, and the Baltics. Yeah, nothing too interesting happened last Tuesday, but maybe something did. And I'm sure he'll be discussing that and the geopolitical ramifications of what's happening in the world right now. So, Dr. Mendelsohn, you're of course welcome to join us next week, but maybe you want to actually sleep through the night. That's up to you. But I will thank you once again for sharing with us this evening, and wish everybody a good week, and we'll see you next week. Okay, shalom.
Great. Bye-bye.